Emmanuel Macron.
Wrong country. That's like to the north.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What about it?
we're in Spain. I'm in Spain without the S.
I'm
And
in Spain without the P.
sane?
Insane, yes. I'm insane.
Oh, it finally clicked. It finally clicked. Oh boy.
This
Spain.
this might be
That's gonna be a long one. I know we said Bordeaux would be long, but that was gonna be like 20 minutes. This might be like 30. We don't know unless until we upload.
well, if we hurry up, we could get through it faster.
Then why don't you talk about the climate in grape growing, big guy?
Well, we're looking at three broad climatic zones as Spain encompasses a lot of viticultural areas. There are viticultural areas throughout the entirety of this country. So our first one that we're going to look at is in the north and northwestern part of Spain, which is going to experience a more moderate maritime climate. We are having a lot of rain hazards in this region. James is going to annotate and show off our first region for you.
Up in
Yep, right there. So near the region of Navarra, encompassing the region of Catalonia.
that's northeast. That's my bad. I don't know my fucking
I don't know. I
directions.
don't know why I let you do that. Um, so if we have this excess rain, we are getting increased vigor as well as increased amounts of disease pressure. The east coast of Catalonia, like I was mentioning, that James had circled. Right there, you
There we
go.
go.
We let him do some stuff around the office. Um, North of the Levante, is going to experience a warmer Mediterranean climate. And this is going to have some moderation influenced by the sea as well as the altitude in the vineyards. And then we have the Meseta Central, which is a large plain in central Spain, which is going to experience a more continental climate. These summers are going to be hot, but they are going to have a moderating influence being the cooler nights as well as the high altitude in certain sites. Um, except the every other region except for northwestern Spain is going to have lots of excessive heat as well as some drought. Vines are generally going to be under stress, which is going to produce nice high quality wine. The vines are going to be planted low density, but bush trained so that we are able to combat the hazards in this area. This is going to maximize the water flow to the vine. It's going to maximize the shade, and it's also going to protect from excessive heat. And some vineyards are going to be able to use mechanization as a way to increase their effectiveness in their harvest season. It's also going to help the affordability of the wine production.
When we're talking about Spain, as we talk about any new country, you talk about their laws. So our PDO level wine, general term for the EU, is going to be translated to DOP, Denominación de Origen Protegida. You then further have the DO, the Denominación de Origen. Wines of a DO quality have to meet like a certain minimum quality. They have to satisfy grape requirements, some viticultural practices, and set locations. Your DOCA is your Denominación de Origen Calificada. Fluent boys. The DOCA is pretty much your most prestigious category wine. So it's pretty much your equivalent to your DOCG in Italy. But there are only two DOCAs, and they are Rioja and Priorat. And you'll see sometimes on bottles of your Priorat, you'll see, what does that say? DOQ instead of DOCA. Means the same thing. You next have your Vinos de Pago, your VP. That is a very small number of individual estates with high reputations. Pretty much the grapes must be produced, fermented, and the wine must be matured on the estate site. You then have your PGI level wine, which is just translated to Vino de la Tierra,
Which is wine of the land
VLT, wine of the land.
or wine of
And
the
just some aging requirements that have been set pretty much nationwide. This list we have here goes from oldest to youngest. So we have our oldest Grand Reserva, which has to be aged 5 years before being released and has to spend some time in oak. Reserva, same thing. It has to spend some time in oak, as well as you have to wait 3 years before it is released. It has to age for at least 3 years. Your Crianza wine has an age of 2 years upon release. You'll have pretty much all kinds of flavors in that bottle, primary, secondary, and your tertiary characteristics. And Joven is just your young wine, meant to be drank and consumed early.
So looking at northern Spain, we're going to talk about our premier grape varieties. Our first and most popular, Tempranillo, which is going to be our most famous grape variety, especially for reds, that we're going to see being produced in Spain. This is going to be a medium acid grape that is well suited for hot climates to get that ideal amount of acid and the perfect amount of ripening and sugars. And we're often going to see this made in a single varietal style. However, when we are seeing it in a blend, we are seeing some carbonic maceration be used to enhance the more fruity and fresh flavors. We are seeing this made in a Joven style in some areas, in a sort of fresher as well as lighter and perhaps a little bit more youthful character. Some are aging and some are being used in oaked blends with, say, Garnacha or Menzuelo or Cabernet Sauvignon, as well as Graciano. Garnacha Tinta, another red grape, we're going to see higher alcohol and higher sugars used for Rosado wine production. And in Priorat, we produce Garnacha from older vines with lower yields, producing more concentrated wines with fuller body.
Some other grapes that are also grown here that we'd like to mention are the Caranera, or Mezuelo. It's the grape Carignan. You have Gran Sanio, you have Mencia, and you have Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot. And now you have some Mediterranean varietals. Like we said, we have Grenache, which is Garnacha, if you haven't picked up. And then you have Carignan, which is Carignana, Manzuelo. This grape has very high acid, high tannin, very deeply colored. And it's sometimes used in a very small quantity when we're talking about Tempranillo-based blends. And it's also often blended with Garnacha in Priorat to give the wine structure. Your Mourvedre, or your Monastrell, as it's locally called, this grape is very thick-skinned, and it's as such very resistant to drought, making it the perfect grape for Spain. It requires these hot conditions to properly ripen, and it does well in the areas of Tecla, Tisia, and Jumilia. These wines made from Mourvedre are full-bodied with high tannin, high alcohol, with low to medium acid. You often have your blackberry character coming from that. Like we said, we've already talked about Tempranillo. Your grape Granaccio is very challenging to grow. Most of your production of Granciano is going to be in Rioja, and it's commonly used in blends to add black fruit character, acidity, and tannin to help for structural purposes. Finally, you have the Mencia. It's considered a Goldilocks varietal, meaning it can grow pretty much anywhere, or it likes one particular climate. Excuse me.
The opposite.
The opposite. It grows in this moderate climate and has fresh fruit with medium to high acid and almost like a slight herbaceous character to it.
So then our international varieties that we're going to see production in Spain, generally in the regions of Navarra or Pendes in the more northeast region, we're going to see Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc, as well as some more aromatic varieties that are going to be suited for the climate. Our primary white grape varieties are going to be Ariane, which is generally going to be the most widely planted white grape in Spain. We're seeing lots of plantings in central Spain, especially La Mancha, and is able to withstand extreme heat as well as drought conditions. So it does well in this continental climate with those warmer temperatures and the flatter land. Majority of our production is going to be for brandy, actually. Brandy de Jerez, which is going to be in production in the central to southern area. We also have Albariño, a common Spanish grape, grown in northwest Spain. Thicker skins is going to be nicely resistant to more fungal diseases. The acid is going to be extremely high with notes of stone fruit as well as some citrus character. And it's going to be made in a richer and more full-bodied style. Verdejo is similar to Sauvignon Blanc in character and is often blended with Sauvignon Blanc. In fact, when it's grown in Spain, it's going to be a high-acid, light body wine with notes of melon and peaches. we're going to have this make a more fuller bodied style if we're seeing skin contact or barrel fermentation. Our cava varietals that we're going to see be planted in Catalonia. When we talk about cava, we're just going to touch on the varietals. Zorello, we're having Parellada as well as Macabeo.
All right, it's time to talk about regions. First off, we got to start talking about Rioja. There are 3 really important subregions within Rioja. They pretty much depend on like how high up you are. You have Rioja Alavesa, which is actually on the foothills of these mountains. Wines made in the foothills are going to be very light, and they are mitigated by a high altitude. Your Rioja Alta is also going to be high altitude, and this is actually cooled by the Atlantic, and they are moderated by the altitude as well. And finally, your Rioja Oriental or Rioja Baja, it's the same thing, same place. Here you're going to have very hot summers with harsh winters. And due to the low rainfall here, grapes grown here are very prone to drought. Now, talking about Rioja styles, we're going to be talking about Tempranillo. It does best in the cooler regions, and Tempranillo is commonly found in these blends that provides medium tannin and very red fruit character. It benefits from alcohol and body from Garnacha, let's say if you're blending the two, which is a common practice in Rioja Oriental. Here, Manzuelo and Ganchino also grow in this region, but it's a much smaller quantity than your Tempranillo. You're going to see a lot of use of American oak here, and wines designed for early drinking are going to use your semi-carbonic maceration, so your whole cluster fermentation, to increase that fruit character and soften the overall tannins of the wine. You're also going to see wines designed for aging, and these are generally destemmed and crushed with some choosing of the grapes to encourage vigorous cap management to extract more tannins and colors from those skins. Your white varietals are going to be Viura, which is typically aged in American oak, and it develops this very rich color, very nutty aromas. And like we said, just going over the Rioja styles, anything can be made here, from your Gran Reserva to your Joven. It's really up to the winemaker. But when you are the winemaker producing these wines, you do have to follow the regulations.
So then our region of Navarra. This is going to be a similar sort of climate to Rioja and Tempranillo, same as Rioja. They're most widely planted grape, which is going to be sometimes blended with other Rioja varietals as well as some international varietals. We're thinking of those Bordeaux blends. Cabernet Sauvignon and Merlot styles are going to have the ability to range from that Joven style to that more Gran Reserva style. Garnacha is going to be used for rosé production in the Navarra region. We're going to have some grapes be picked early in order to produce a nice fruity and light-bodied wine, and some white wines are going to be grown from Viura, Chardonnay, as well as Sauvignon Blanc. I'll hit us with the next region of Catalud,
yep,
as well as Carnea. Both of these regions are going to feature a warm continental climate, slightly lower rainfall, and Garnacha is going to be our main grape varietal in both of these regions. These are going to be regions producing inexpensive wines, slightly simpler in style, meant for early drinking. They're going to be nice and fruity and light. Our higher quality wines, however, are going to be from old vine production of Garnacha and Carigna, with nice, great flavors, great intensity, lots of structure and body, and they hold up really nicely.
All right, moving on to Catalonia. This region occupies northeastern Spain by the Pyrenees Mountains near the French border. Most of the vineyards are actually concentrated into an area south of the city of Barcelona. And Catalonia does have a generic DO that covers the entire region. However, this does not cover sparkling wine, because Catalonia is actually is where nearly all of your cava is going to be coming out of. You have some sub-regions of Catalonia, like Penedès. That's actually immediately southwest of Barcelona, and you have pretty much 3 climactic zones. You have a hot Mediterranean climate on the coast because you're on the Mediterranean. You have your warm continental climate in the inland valleys, and as we get onto the hills, the temperature is going to moderate more, so we'll see a more moderate climate. Because of these three climatic zones, you're going to have a wide array of both grape varietals and wine styles here. And the most commonly planted grapes in Catalonia are going to be your Cava varietals, although there is some planting of international varieties.
So then the region of Priorat. This region is going to feature nice, dry, and hot summers and is going to have the perfect conditions for production of Carigna as well as Garnacha. These are going to have nice high diurnal ranges, which provide the grapes with nice cooler evenings as a sort of temperature contrast from the nice heat of daytime. We're having a Licorella soil, which is red slate. It is nice in its water retention. It also helps the ripening process by reflecting and retaining heat during the day. Mechanization is not possible for this area because of the steep slopes as well as the bush training of the vines. They're trained in a way in which mechanization is just not it's not feasible, it's not possible. Vines are generally going to have smaller yields, which produces nice high quality and high concentration wines. And our Priorats are generally going to be on the pricier side. This is
the factors that influence the price of wine.
It's the environment as well as the winemaking, as well as the grape growing in this scenario, because you cannot mechanize. Red Priorat is a style that we're going to see. This is going to be a high tannin, deeply colored wine, higher alcohol, medium to high in that level, black fruited, sometimes using French oak. We're having Carigna and Garnacha be the core of these blends with some supplements from Cabernet Sauvignon to perhaps add a little bit more structure or a little bit more complexity.
All right, we're moving on to the Duero Valley. Your river, the Duero River, runs right through the mountains south of Rioja. And one of the big regions here is Ribeira del Duero. Your mountains in this region shelter the vines from your maritime influence. So you have very short, hot, and dry summers, very cold winters. The best vineyards in Ribeira del Duero are actually at high altitude. That provides temperature control, the mitigating effects of the natural factors on the vineyard. You have a regional DO for red, white, and rosé production, with a lot of red production actually dominating this DO. Tempranillo is the most common here, known for its dark color and high tannins. You'll see some Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Malbec, and Garnacha is actually used for rosé production. Some winemakers in Ribeira del Duero put their wine through extended maceration to further concentrate these fruit flavors and the tannins. It's also accompanied by time and new and old oak vessels. French oak actually in this region is becoming much more popular than American oak, as seen traditionally elsewhere in Spain. You're moving on to the other subregion of Toro. It's a similar climate to Ribeira del Duero, and we're also seeing Tempranillo-based wine. It's very full-bodied with intense fruit flavors and a high alcohol. In Joven wine, there's typically a proportion of Garnacha to add structure. And Reservas and Grand Reservas from Toro can age quite well. You next have Rueda. This is actually sandwiched in between. Rueda is actually sandwiched in between Toro and Ribeira del Duero, and this region, unlike the rest of Spain, pretty much focuses entirely on white wine production. You have a continental climate here with very cool nights, and that makes it ideal for Verdejo production. Sauvignon Blanc is actually the second most important varietal here, and these two can either be grown and bottled separately as single varietal or blended together. However, when you are blending both Verdejo and Sauvignon Blanc and Rueda, the blend must have 50% Verdejo. Styles in this region pretty much range from simple and fruity to very rich barrel fermented wines.
Then Northwest Spain, We are nearing the finish line. We're going to have some Atlantic influence as a moderating factor. This is going to promote moisture, which is going to increase our disease pressure, as well as cool our vineyards. We are seeing lots of high quality wine in these regions, especially in the region of Rias Piajas, where we're seeing a more moderate as well as moist maritime climate. Pergolas are going to be used in order to increase air circulation, especially for grapes like Albarino, which is going to be in high quality production here, producing an unoaked, extremely high acid style with notes of ripe stone fruit. Some winemakers are going to use oak or lees stirring for richer styles in terms of texture as well as body. And some of our red wines are permitted, however, not as commonly grown as, say, Albarino. Then the region of Bierzo, which is going to be a predominantly red wine DO as compared to Rias Piajas. Our moderate climate is going to be cooled by this maritime influence, creating a nice condition for Mencia, which is going to produce a nice elegant style of red wine, nice high acid with a more red fruited character. And many of these wines are going to be from older vines with nice low yields and high concentration. And some wine producers are going to produce an unoaked wine. However, some do choose to use oak.
Moving on, we have the Levante. This region is actually on the Mediterranean coast, and one of the big sub-regions we'd like to talk about is Valencia. This is a very common producer of value wines. You'll see a lot of production of Monastrell or your Mourvedre for red wine, or your Merceguera for white wine. You actually see some production of Muscat of Alexandria for sweet fortified wines coming out of this region. You have the further regions of Jumilia and Yekla. Yeah, I'm fluent. These two regions have been kind of lumped together because they're kind of similar. They are both inland with a very hot and arid continental climate, which actually makes it ideal for Monastrell, your Mourvedre. And most of the wines coming out of this sub-region are going to be made in a very youthful and fruity style, much like the Joven style.
Our last region, Castilla-La Mancha, which is going to account for the majority of Spain's wine production, generally in more large quantity, bulk, low cost production. This is going to be our largest DO in Spain, with the majority of our grapes being Arién. It's going to make a nice fresh style of wine that's sort of neutral on the palate as well as for aromatic character. These plantings of Arién are going to be generally seen as not beneficial by authorities, rather preferring the use of Tempranillo, or locally known in this area as Sensibel, as well as some other international varietals. This region is an excellent source of, like I said, this inexpensive and high quality white wine in this style, in this region, since it has such a wide area of growing potential. And it's going to be home to some of our best estates, especially in the appellation of Vino de Pago. We have Valpinenas, which is just south of La Mancha. It's going to have a similar sort of climate, and we're going to see Arién be the most widely planted here as well. But we are going to have a better reputation, or rather a greater reputation than the region of La Mancha, because of this quality production of Arién and Tempranillo, which is going to be our major red grape of the region, generally used in a single varietal style, but can blend with some international varieties for more structure or complexity. And the wines do range in concentrations from fruity and lighter to more concentrated and oaky and fuller, a little bit more complex. That wasn't too bad. It was like ripping a Band-Aid off.
Yes, Spain without the S, but only for a little bit.
Spain without the T?
I'm in
Spain?
I'm in Spain without the A.
Yeah.